Thank you very much, Annie, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, thank you for attending what is the final panel of what's been a fantastic conference on this question of where is the edge, and kind of diving into the journey that operators have been on this opportunity, the obstacles, the learnings, and indeed what is the future outlook on this opportunity here. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by two experts in this field. So perhaps first, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone, and good morning. My name is Mark Toman. I'm Client Director at BT Wholesale. I've been on this edge journey now for the last 3 years, and I was responsible for the partnership with AWS. We built wavelength into BT's network. And since then, we've been working to see how do we bring edge to life? What does that mean? What does it mean for our customers? And from a telco perspective, what do we need to do to enable that? And I just heard a great quote on the last panel, which was about telcos being the locomotive, and I completely agree with that. So it's about enabling the network and actually bringing that ecosystem and partnership together. So that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years, really to bring Network Edge to life. So pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Dario, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Hello, George. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So thanks for inviting me, and it's my pleasure to be here. So my name is Dario Sabella. I'm working with Explore Research as a Vice President, Standard and Technologies. But here I'm with the hat of Chairman of a standardization body. So I'm pleased to talk about edge computing. I like what Mark said. Of course, we would like to. So yes, sharing this standard group on edge computing, and our approach is really for it's needed and pertinent to facilitate market adoption of edge computing. It's our interesting focus.
Perfect. And thank you for the introduction there, Dario. I think first, and perhaps for audience members who are not so familiar with edge computing, and particular multi-access edge computing, would you be able, Dario, to kind of give a quick summary of what this technology is really aiming to achieve and how ETSI is driving its development? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, George. Indeed, we are there in the industry since a lot of years. I remember that we started to talk about edge computing, I would say, since 2014, and also it was still possible there to deploy that. But of course, the industry was more inclined to couple this deployment with the advent of 5G. Nonetheless, the concept is quite access agnostic, right? So the concept of the edge is actually very simple. You want to put a workload closer to the end user, not in the remote cloud, or maybe not necessarily in the remote cloud. And this is not an alternative to the remote cloud, but it is an additional degree of freedom, a possibility to place workloads and applications there closer to, in order to let's say, reduce also the traffic load and also to shorten the path with benefits in terms of latency. Not only that, not only benefit in terms of shorter latency, but also having access to local information where they are generated at the edge, via sensors, IoT, and anything else which is there locally. It makes no sense to do the traffic path back and forth remotely, where the data is generated somewhere and then you want to process elsewhere. Maybe it's making more sense to do that locally, right? So again, not in alternative to the remote cloud, but the edge offers this additional degree of freedom. Of course, it comes with a cost opportunity, and where exactly is the edge, I believe, is the topic of today. So usually I say the answer. My answer is that it depends. Because I am an engineer, I love this kind of answer. But really and truly, from a standard perspective, let me clarify that we wanted to keep this definition open. and because it's a business decision. We are very respectful of the operator choice and the service provider choices where they want to put the edge workload. It's really a sort of trade-off between costs and benefits in terms of total cost of ownership overall, and benefit in terms of performances that you want to get. Thanks to the deployment of the edge. So really the deepness of the edge really depends on this fundamental trade-off. So in this perspective, if you want, just to put it shortly, right? If you want to be closer to the user, of course you can reach better performances, but on the other hand, you need more scale in terms of number of points of contact, point of presence, and then maybe this is coming with a cost because you need to deploy more nodes at the edge. And vice versa, if you instead, let's say, relax this sort of requirement, and then you maybe get higher latency, ideally, if you talk about latency, and of course, you need less servers number to serve a certain area of territory. This is just a generic fundamental trade-off, but you can understand that from a standard perspective, we never ever wanted to limit to a specific deployment option because it's indeed a business decision. And the standard should support the market, not vice versa. If we over-engineer, if we over-standardize things, we are risking to close them. This is not our just to, I hope I've clarified my perspective, but of course I'm glad to hear other opinions or flavors.
Thank you, Dario. And I really love the emphasis you place there on the edge being this continuum and kind of the flexibility in where you do deploy the ultimate compute infrastructure is kind of questions and I guess contingent on the use cases at hand. Mark, I'd like to ask you kind of more about BT's journey in this domain and how kind of BT has really approached kind of monetizing and leveraging this opportunity.
Thanks, George. Yeah, so like I said, BT's been on a journey, and I think most telcos have been on a journey with edge. So started off with quite a lot of hype, you know, it was the next big thing. We're now talking about AI, but I think when we talk about edge, it has gone a lot quiet, and that's actually a good thing because it means people are knuckling down and actually working out how do we deploy the edge and what does it really mean for our customers. So my job is to actually bring it all together and monetize edge and actually work with our customers, work with our suppliers, and work with our partners to actually understand what that means. And we've done a lot of soul searching. We've talked quite a lot across the globe, and actually we've taken some guidance from one of our key partners across the US, Verizon. They've done a lot of good work with edge. But when we talk about edge, we talk too much about the technology. We don't talk enough about the ecosystem. And we've changed the way that we talk to our customers. And ultimately, it's about how do we solve customer problems? What is it that we're trying to do? And why would our customers pay a premium for these types of services? And I think the biggest challenge we had is edge by itself. And in this example, I am talking network edge. And I do believe this is the telco's right to play. And only telcos can provide that type of service. You need a mobile network, you need a fixed line network, you need to be able to bring that together, and you are that interface into the customers. And I think this is something that telcos have struggled with because we are sitting back and waiting for someone else to do it. So that was something we changed. We leaned forward and we started taking the initiative. The other thing that we've done at BT is we've looked at what is that ecosystem? How do we control that supply chain? And how do we control the customer experience? And I think this is why telcos have struggled in the past, because there's many parts to edge. I talk about this new thing called Stitch. It's about stitching it all together. So you need a high performance 5G network. You need a fantastic cloud provider. You need great ISVs, but they all need to come together. One, from a cost perspective, can you get to that cost envelope? Do you understand the budget you're trying to achieve? Are you co-creating with the customers? So that's something I've changed. We do not do anything in BT now without a customer involved. So co-creation with customers is absolutely paramount. And the reason for that is if you're not co-creating with a customer, you're not understanding the problem you're trying to solve, and you also don't know what you need to do in the network to rectify that approach. Yeah, so that's something we've done. And moving away from, everyone talked about edge. We talked about low latency, ultra low latency. That's important. But what we're finding is low latency, high availability are the two key metrics for the 5G network. But two other things have come out as more paramount than that for compute at the edge, which is about data sovereignty. You're seeing more and more governments making sure that the data is within a territory. So that is becoming paramount. And also security. This is a huge driver for us in some of the initiatives that we've been working on. Security is a large element to that. And to the point, anyone touching our cloud-based propositions on the edge are now all security cleared. They're all onshore. And we've created that ecosystem so people can trust what we're doing. So that is a big change. And I'm pleased to say we're making a lot of progress on edge. And the two big spaces where we're seeing a lot of traction, public sector, a lot of support around health and safety services, where life-threatening instances might be happening and where real-time engagement is critical. The other place is around medium broadcast. As you know, we've got Euro 28 coming up. So 5G Edge plays a big role in that. So I'm excited that we'll be making some big announcements next month on some of our first scale opportunities in Edge.
That's fantastic to hear. And I love the focus there on kind of emphasizing the importance of delivering business outcomes rather than this kind of build it and they will come approach, really kind of partnering and working closely with customers. Would you be able to provide any kind of examples, Mark, of kind of how you've been collaborating with customers and any kind of specific use cases with which the Wavelength site has facilitated?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're doing a lot now. I mean, the old joke about telcos, we've got more pilots than BA, but that's beside the point. I mean, for us, we've launched our first scale opportunity with Belfast City Council. So we did a augmented AR VR council experience there. So you can put on your headsets and you get to see a historical approach about Belfast City Council, and you can see all the historic landmarks of Belfast in real time. That's all provided by BT over the edge. So that's actually, even though it's in Belfast, that's provided by the Wavelength Zone in Manchester. And because we optimize the network and we optimize the whole performance of it, you're getting a fantastic experience. So that's one initiative. I've got another initiative that I can't talk about right now, so talk to me next month. I'd love to talk to you about it. But it's working in the public sector, especially with blue light services, health and safety, really, really big opportunity there. But we're also seeing a lot more opportunity around the medium broadcast. So I spoke to you about Euro 28, which is a big exercise in the UK. There's going to be a lot of focus as we lead up to that. That's almost as big as the Olympics. But we're starting to do some really interesting stuff with some innovative companies around health and safety, real-time AR. We're working with FIFA. So there's quite a lot in the space that I'm excited about, but I can't actually talk about right now.
That's great to hear, and always nice to see stuff kind of progressing in the pipeline. Dario, I'd like to ask you, and this kind of touches on a question we've just had in the chat, kind of how AI is impacting this space, particularly kind of in the kind of development of use cases that really kind of need to leverage this network edge environment. So it'd be great to get your perspective on how AI is kind of, I guess, is it catalyzing or markedly changing this role of the network edge, and particularly in the spaces of B2B and B2C use cases?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the big elephant in the room, if I can say, because George, AI is actually a big thing, and everybody is talking about AI. I was, let's say, from a standard perspective, I was, as a chairman of the ETSI MEC, I was a little bit careful when it comes to the standardization and the role of the standards there. But more in general, your question is about the edge. So let's talk about at least what we have seen in the past years. I say always AI is a new technology old of 50 years. When I was a younger engineer, we were playing with the neural networks in MATLAB, and a lot of time has passed since there, lovely period. But then when we see this a few years ago coming to the major the big audience, the generative AI. Now, this is a really more, let's say, a widely known technology, not just only AI, ML, but also generative AI. And there is a lot of traction in the industry, a lot of investment. I don't have to teach you. You know better than me in STL. Maybe you have done some market forecast or analysis. The point is, what is the role at the edge, right? And just recently, we have seen that smaller models can be affordable after this, what I call it with friends, DeepSeek earthquake. So actually, they are changing a lot of things and dynamics in the industry. But in any case, it's not just because of DeepSeek. It's because, generally speaking, when there is a new technology, the maturity is coming just later on, right? So, and then maturity means also optimization, reduction of costs, and improvement of the performances, and of course ratio between performance and costs. And this makes it more affordable, considering AI workloads, not just at the big clouds, not just by big giants, but also with smaller companies, and also for unlocking some business for the edge. So really, I see now entering in the more interesting phase for the edge. Both will say for B2B. Well, I'm based in Italy. I know that, for example, Italian ecosystem of companies is mostly based 90% by SMEs. Only few big corporations, few big companies, but the majority of companies in the industry is given by SMEs. And then this is something very important to take into account when you need to consider the amount of money that can be spent by a company to adopt a certain technology. Right? It can be limited. And then maybe the affordability of a service at the edge can be something to consider also for AI workloads. So everybody is falling in love with AI, but now maybe we are starting with the more interesting part when this becomes gradually to be more affordable at the edge. I will say from B2B, but also B2C. The point is, for the edge, you want to have it. And here maybe I can connect to what Mark said. I like the point related to the edge on security aspects, and data sovereignty is where you want to have some private edge or some edge with everything in terms of data ownership. You want to have a full control of what you have there. Maybe also to keep, let's say, ownership of the costs. Sometimes in the cloud is not truly always understandable a priori what is your cost figure running an AI workload. And also data transfer, egress, traffic costs, and so on and so forth. So actually, the edge could be now maybe not, again, not an alternative, but in addition to the cloud, a location where you can run for B2B, especially in my view, AI workloads. Now, the standards, again, I always say the same. The standard should only follow industrial needs. What we want to see now is real money coming for services, and we want to be at the service of industry. So the standardization, why is needed? Is only needed where you have to unlock interoperability between systems. And still now we are not yet totally there, because AI models are a jungle. I don't know, I was counting a few weeks ago, maybe more than 1.5 million of models, very specialized for everything. And they are maybe growing daily. and we are, and nobody can predict how innovation will put new things on the market. But really, when this will happen, also maybe some more, let's say, solutions will be more mature, and then there will be a natural need to standardize maybe some semantic or some protocols to unlock interoperability, and that will be a tool for operators as well to let's say kind of adopt some interoperable solutions with the benefit of it.
Perfect. Thank you, Dario. And yes, I felt certainly at MWC this year, AI was quite inescapable, and it's definitely really compelling to see kind of how particularly small language models are really becoming quite powerful and enabling kind of agentic AI use cases. So certainly kind of see a role for the edge in kind of capturing this growing demand for AI inferencing. Mark, I'd also like to kind of extend the opportunity to kind of provide the perspective from an operator of kind of how AI is really kind of, if it's catalyzing this landscape, and kind of how network edge can really be positioned to capitalize on this growing demand.
Yeah, AI is one thing I am getting used to is the Gartner hype curve, and trying to take all these different technologies. So for me, AI is just another use case, and what we're seeing is a conflation of technologies coming together. I think this is actually creating a challenge for the telcos. So telcos traditionally are very good at networks, they're very good with their customers, but you're now adding a lot of technology into it, and a lot of complexity. And part of that journey is, from a sales perspective, we don't spend enough time thinking about how do we communicate this with our customers? How do we bring this together, and how do we articulate that? So when we're talking about, we're now moving away from edge, compute at the edge. We're now talking agentic AI. We're talking about distributed AI architecture. We're moving away from large language models into small language models. There's a lot to take in. And the key for me, and this is where I think we almost need to take a step back, because these technologies are coming, is actually be good at what you do now, get the foundation and the building blocks right, and then these use cases will automatically fall into place. So if you get your edge strategy right, AI is just another type of compute. So if you've got enough power, if you've got the space and availability to increase the capacity for that compute workloads and platforms, the hyperscalers and your partners are already moving into that area. So it will come to life. It's just trying to understand, what does it mean? And it comes back to that first thing that I spoke about. What are the use cases, and what problems are you trying to solve? And we spend too much time talking about technology. How do we implement the technology? But we don't spend enough time talking about, well, what does it mean for our customers? How do we articulate to that? I mean, how do we package in a way that they can easily consume and make telcos easy to do business with? And that's where I'm really focused at the moment, is trying to really control that ecosystem and make sure that all these new technologies can find their way there, that we're building those platforms, because I do see the telco as the enabler for this. And this is where I think telcos are finding their feet, is they are the glue that brings everything together. None of this is possible without the network. And this is the role of the telcos. So, but the telcos are spending all this time trying to understand, well, how do I implement this? What does it mean from a cost perspective? So there's challenges everywhere. So for me, it's about building the right foundation and making sure that we're really clear on why we're doing it, be specific about our actions, but ensuring the sales teams can actually talk to the customers about this, because there's a lot of complexity.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic point, Mark, in this kind of sales side, and how to articulate the kind of value of these services, particularly given enterprises may not be kind of, I guess, really cognizant of why the network edge itself differentiates from the cloud or an on-premise deployment, and what its unique advantages are. Would you say there's been kind of shift on the behalf of BT from an initial focus on latency to kind of really kind of emphasizing its kind of importance of sovereignty, and kind of how, I guess my real question is, how is BT really articulating the network edge, and how it differentiates itself from typical deployment models on-prem or on the cloud?
No, it's a really good point, because we did start with ultra low latency as the key driver for edge. You need this because you need low latency services. What we didn't realize is that's a given. Our customers already expect the network to be able to support that. And we didn't look at, well, what else do we need? Yeah. So when we talk about sovereignty, when we're talking about security, what we're really talking about is trust.
Yeah.
Can I trust you with my data, with my service? Will it run? Will it run when I need it? And do I know where my data is? And those are the instances when we're talking the customer language, that's what's important to them. When we start going too technical, we start talking all these standards and we talk about all these technologies, we're usually talking to someone in a council who's maybe done an IT course. It just blows their mind. But if we can start talking about, and this will help you with your rubbish collection, we'll be able to run in real time, what levels you've been at, you can then monitor. When you start talking their language, suddenly the whole thing changes. And that's the big step change I'd like to see in telcos, is actually start talking your customers' language, start understanding their problems, engage more with them, and actually bring them with them on the journey, because you'll find they'll give you everything you need to know. And in fact, you'll make much better decisions, because all the network changes and all the things I go back and ask for, there's money at the end of it. I know there's a budget.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's great to hear kind of speaking, I guess, through this panel on the kind of unique advantages of the network edge and kind of some of the obstacles that have needed to be overcome. Dario, I think one of the key points that I'd love to hear you speak on is the need for federation. And indeed at MWC, we saw kind of Telefonica, Deutsche Telekom and Telecom Italia showcase their kind of progress in this field of establishing a kind of more federated European edge cloud as part of the ETSI CIS project. And I'd love to hear you speak on kind of the importance of federation in this space and how ETSI has been driving it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, George, for the question. Indeed, here I see a lot of value for what we did in ETSI. To be, let's say, fully transparent, we started this journey back in 2020, before the lockdown. I remember talking with the operators, asking me, Dario, we have to do something with GSMA, OPG, ETSI and 3GPP. We are really to do something on that. We operators, we would like to bring something on the federation space, and we need the standards to put in place. We need to talk all the same language to interoperate. So the federation was a concept started. I'm pleased to see that we were publishing as a first of our kind a general group report, GR 35, driven by an operator, as a study enabling the normative work that we have put in MEC in those years. I was meeting also during the COVID, but also after that, every month with a chair call meetings every month together with the GSMA OPG operator platform group, myself as a chairman of ETSI MEC, the chairman of SA6 in 3GPP, on the standardization actions to align each other on how really we can define the ways federation is being made. Federation action is not a concept invented by us. No, if you are familiar with the cloud computing, and have in mind, for example, the definition for the NIST, the NIST, the American Institution of Standard Technology, the cloud computing definition there was also kind of extended to the federated cloud reference architecture, but defined by them. So we are not just reinventing the wheel. But the federation is actually a concept where you want to put different domains together. And it's not only just a technical issue, it's also an administrative and, let's say, business agreement issue, right? So putting infrastructure together brings value and opportunities for operators to share their edge infrastructure and cloud infrastructure and provide to each other services, expanding their markets. You can offer also to your customers a service continuity, what I call it friendly speaking MEC handover, MEC federation MEC handover, because maybe you want to keep the possibility to offer to your customers edge computing benefits even across different countries, and exploiting the network of different other operators. And some operators may not have yet their edge infrastructure deployed, so maybe some other more advanced operators can offer them the edge infrastructure. And then you can have a situation, very hybrid situation, where you have an edge infrastructure hosting different workloads, owned and managed by different stakeholders and different applications, right? So different domains can be coexisting together in the same in different infrastructure owners. So a federation is not the ownership of a single operator, but actually we have seen in GSMA Open Gateway a sort of memorandum of understanding signed by many operators globally, covering like more than 60% of the global mobile subscriptions. So it's just not just a deal between few people, but many global service providers, aiming to bring together this idea of a federation. What we did in ETSI MEC, it was actually our main goal for MEC Phase 3 specifications to align with the GPP Release 18, which is what we did. So with the 5G Advanced and with the 3GPP SA6 specification, CT3, and also to collaborate with the GSMA OPG, which is an industry group led by mobile operators. And also we are collaborating with the open source project, which is under Linux Foundation, for who is knowing that is a Camara project, which is equally important because open source can be also a driver for bringing innovation and complementary to standardizations, not in competition, I would say, because we are standardizing only what is needed, but we are not pretending to, let's say, produce thousands of APIs. This is not in our scope. It will be too much and also kind of not pertinent as an ambition for the standardization. We are putting in place the basic elements for enabling the federation, for example, the east-west bound interface between different operators and domains, and enabling this interoperability. And there are also complementary initiatives like these open source communities, which are really also pushing the boundaries of innovation and driven by working solution in software, can also prove that things are, let's say, going to commercially viable use cases. So this is actually my pleasure to see that now we did a lot of work so far. Still, there is a lot, but I see also some commercial efforts from service providers to cooperate together for the federation and for the standardization. We are offering this support and collaborating also with the open source communities. This is just, let's say, maybe the beginning of the journey, because now we have built the infrastructure. As Mark said, we have talked too much about technology. We have the tools, we are there, and now, of course, there are the enablers, I would say, to offer end-to-end services, interoperable services to customers.
Thank you, Dario. And yes, it's great to hear kind of how federation is this catalyst for, I guess, allowing the market to scale and kind of enable, I guess, enterprises or application developers to kind of have a more consistent environment to deploy in and really ramp up deployment. I'm wary we're approaching the end of our time. I'll just first, before I can see some questions coming into the Q&A, first, Mark, I just wonder if you had any final reflections on this topic, any messages we'd like to end before I post you some of the kind of questions from the audience.
No, I think we've talked about Edge for a number of years now, and I'm going to make a statement. This is the year where we start seeing Edge come to life, and we actually start seeing commercial services at scale, and we'll start seeing that momentum build. There's a lot of work gone into it, and one of the things I'll say to telcos is we need to knuckle down and actually just persevere to push through some of these challenges, because the opportunities are there, and actually our customers want to work with us because they've got a lot of problems that we can solve.
Perfect. Yeah, and I like, it's very enthusiastic sentiment to end on. And I do feel certainly that kind of the network edge specifically has been in the trough of disillusionment. And yeah, we certainly at SCL agree that 2025 is going to be the year of the edge. Dario, is there any final reflections you'd like to end on before we go to the final audience questions?
Yeah, another point that maybe needs or deserves another panel dedicated per se is also maybe talking about the future. We need also to see what is the level of, let's say, trade-off between the products and the regulation. Now, especially in Europe, I see this as a challenge, an opportunity, but also a trade-off to understand how much we should regulate, also in the global landscape of the competition. Maybe it's a bigger problem. Again, it deserves a dedicated panel on that, but I believe there actually our approach, at least in the European market, is very much balanced so far. In my understanding, but of course the technology is let's say evolving so fast. So I believe the next challenge will be also to be honest, also to understand to which extent we also need to comply with the regulation and also balance this with the product advancement and innovation. That will be something maybe not fully in my power. Of course, I do my part of my job in the ecosystem, but let's say as an observer of the market, I see this as a need also for us to let's say keep the compliance, but also ensure that we can move into a competitive landscape as well, not only in Europe but globally. So that will be also another reflection for the future. But
Fantastic.
still I'm positive. We just don't want to only give challenges.
Perfect. We have 2 minutes left, and thank you for those who put questions in the chat. Mark, there is one question, I guess, on relating to the kind of the status of BT's edge infrastructure, and I guess asking about kind of its current state. And I mean, I know you have hinted at a lot of kind of future announcements in the pipeline, but I don't know if you want to speak on this question.
Okay, yeah, no, it's a good question. So BT's edge infrastructure, my focus is on network edge, and we're very mature in that space. So we've built out Manchester. We've got the wavelength zone there. We've got partners with AWS, Juniper, Ericsson. So the ecosystem has been well developed. We're working with a lot of ISVs and hyperscalers to actually build a lot of the use cases that we'll be talking about over the next few months. I'm happy to talk to anyone directly. So if you've got some interesting ideas or we want to know more, please contact me directly, whether on LinkedIn or through any channel. But we're not just focused on network edge. And this is one of the things, my ultimate vision for edge is compute where you need it. We've always talked about a sliding scale. So whether that's on-prem, device edge, or at the RAN, ultimately, I'd like to see a world where the use case determines where the compute is, and the compute's always where you need it, and it's a seamless experience. So that's my utopia when it comes to this type of environment. But everyone needs to put their infrastructure in place. And for me, network edge is the telco's right to play, and this is where only the telcos can lead in the space because no one else can do it.
Thank you, Mark. And I think there's a great sentiment to end on. I believe we have reached time now, and I just want to extend a huge thank you to Dario and Mark and Mobile Europe for organising what I think has been a fantastic panel.
Thank you, George and Mark and Dario. And I must say, that is the most sense I've heard talked about edge possibly ever. And Mark, I especially appreciated your comments about we all thought that low latency was the big deal until it occurred to us that actually from the customer's point of view, that was table stakes. I think that's the real sort of bucket of cold water over the head, isn't it? And I also really like your comments about learning to talk the customer's language or speak the customer's language, because I suspect we might all be a bit guilty of that, looking from our own end of the binoculars and never thinking what it might look like from the other side. So I thought that was super. Dario, thank you very much. Great to have you here.